So yeah, I'm Kevin. I'm the co-founder of Veenome. I'm going to give a quick non-salesy background because I'm sure some of you don't know what we do. So as a little bit of context, our business is basically taking video, the visual stuff in video, and sometimes the audio, and translating that into data in very large quantities. And then we take that data and we basically translate that into categories, tags, these sorts of things. It's the reverse scroll here. So our customers are big video ad networks, big publishers, these kinds of organizations, anyone that's dealing with lots and lots of video. And what I want to talk today about is basically the idea that once you raise money or even have a little bit of money and you're kind of working on your idea or working on your business, trying to figure out sort of separating feedback from things like press and kind of general excitement versus actual feedback from your customers. You know, we had an experience where we had this product that I raised, the initial $500K I raised, and I had this product which I thought was really exciting. As time went on, I sort of found out that I didn't think it was going to make a lot of money, despite what I was hearing from the general press and the community at large, who said, this is great, we've always wanted this. The businesses that we were working with really weren't buying that product, and so it was very difficult to kind of like separate excitement and like froth, the sort of like startup froth of like, you're so great, everything you're doing so great, versus like actual feedback from your customers. And that's what this is about, is sort of like trying to navigate those two messages and making sure that you kind of listen to that. Because for us, at least, I'm almost positive that we would have ran out of money by now had I sort of stuck with the froth and not kind of gone with what our customers were saying. So just a little bit on sort of this preliminary idea. So I had this idea when I was working for a company called Pointabout, where I basically I was working with a big enterprise client building a mobile app, and I was trying to take pictures of credit cards and frequent flyer cards and do image recognition. And long story short, it was very difficult to get the numbers right because there were too many ways in which the user could get it wrong. And so what I did was basically look for video recognition companies that could provide me with multiple frames, so the user would have less of a chance to fuck that up, and they'd have the thing wrong or the flash would be on. So we'd give them 2 seconds of video, and now you have 60 chances, 30 frames per second, 60 chances to get that number right. So we would take the most common number and input that into the app. And the problem was that didn't really exist. So that was kind of how I started this company, which was sort of this gap in the market. And as I sort of started to test with that, I realized that this data could be used for things like e-commerce, so that you would tag something like this guy's towel or the shower curtain, and you tag that, you have a time and a geometric kind of, where on the video this tag is, and that you could do this sort of click to buy, where you would, this user initiated, we experimented with a bunch of different user experience, but the idea was that you would scroll over the video when you wanted to buy something, you click on it and buy it. Right, and this seemed like a better alternative to pre-roll, which is the sort of 15-second ads you have to sit through to watch a video. Right, you sit through a 15-second ad and you watch 30 seconds of video, and it's pretty annoying. It's a block ad, and it's sort of this old form of advertising. And so I said, okay, we're going to be disruptive. We're going to be the disruptive video ad startup. And the problem with that was that I didn't realize at the time is that the pre-roll marketplace is it's very lucrative, right? Everyone's making a lot of money, and this idea of disruption is very hard when there are big businesses making lots of money. It's much easier when they're making not a lot of money with banner ads, right? There's a lot of innovation around display ads, but with video ads, the market is very, very frothy. People are making a lot of money. And so I would go to these companies and say, hey, check this out. And they'd say, wow, that's so sexy, that's so cool. We'll let you know. And but there were some messages that I was getting from them saying, well, what about that data? What about that data? We could use that data for this or that. And so there's kind of echoey messages that were happening as I was pitching this product. And the problem is that I was also getting feedback from other people. I wound up doing a Robert Scoble interview and all this stuff that you would think you would want to do as a startup, like a CNET interview, just all this interest and excitement around this initial product, which was this hover and click idea, this sort of buying things in video. And but eventually I sort of realized that like I kept having trouble over a period of 2 or 3 months, having trouble selling this, and I wound up with some really small deal, like B2B deals, where they would say, you know, we want you to change the icons and do all this kind of design work, and that's great work, but it's not really my experience. Like I don't really have a lot of experience in doing a lot of like high-end design and these kinds of things. So it was like, we either have to like really focus on this sort of custom work that we're not experienced with, or we got to listen to our customers and start to try and deliver things that they're actually going to buy. And so that's what we did. And you know, it was a very psychologically for me, it was a tough. And there are no kids in the audience, so I can share this. So psychologically, it was a very tough thing, right? Because one of the things people were asking for were basically to filter porn, you know. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, that's, you know, not the sexiest business in the world, but there are a lot of legitimate video companies that are trying to. Like for instance, like Dailymotion and big publishers that get a lot of sort of like weird stuff like this, which is not really porn, but you're sort of not, as an advertiser, you don't want to put a video in front of it, and it's, you know, it's very, very difficult to detect, and so we have to do these things at scale. But like when I started Veenome, I wasn't like, you know, this is what I really want to do. Like I really want to remove like anime nudity from publisher sites. Probably not, but it winds up being a really interesting business, right? So the other business, that's not all that we do, and in fact that's a pretty minor part of it, but that's how we've sort of gotten our foot in the door with a bunch of people. We do a lot of like categorization, moderation, viewability. We work with all these different customers now, but it's totally different than the thing that we were doing, in the sense that while the data existed for this, you know, click to buy product, we kind of really had to back up and think about like, how are we going to sell this? How is this going to work in the marketplace? I still think that the original idea will work eventually, but it was really hard to separate the like excitement and the sort of like general press and kind of startup press that we got around the original idea versus this kind of stuff, which is, okay, we're getting the width and the height of the video for advertisers to know how big the videos that they're running ads on, so they'll pay more for bigger ads. They'll, you know, get the categories so that we figure out if the video's automotive or technology, and so that advertisers will pay more. Apple will pay more to advertise in tech videos, and Toyota will pay more to advertise in automotive videos. And so generating all this data per video and doing it at very large scale wound up being a very lucrative business, and one that's successful. And that's the one that led us to the second round of funding, which was almost $1 million, and allowed us to kind of continue on. And I'm not sure whether we'll need another round of funding after this, just because this data business has been really lucrative. And I'm almost sure, I've looked at the numbers, I'm 95% sure that by now we would have been out of money. We would have been making a little bit of money with the click to buy stuff, but we would have basically ran out of money by now had we not done this. And so that's just my one piece of advice, is sort of try and figure out, like, maybe be sort of less attached to the idea that you have to be, you know, it has to be this first passionate thing that you're doing. And I hate the word pivot, but the idea that like it's a little hard to step away from that first thing that you think of, at least it was for me. And the second thing is to try and separate like real feedback, like real true feedback from your customers, asking for things, talking with their money, versus everything else which is celebrated in the startup community, which is like a Robert Scoble video, an interview on CNET, you know, articles in TechCrunch. These are all sort of false forms of feedback, and if you follow them, it can be kind of a dangerous path. So anyways, that's all.
Questions?
Any questions?
So talking about getting feedback from customers and using that to kind of evolve your product or whatever. So how did you guys kind of filter that feedback? Because if you go to 10 different customers, you get 10 different feedback, or 10 different types of feedback from them.
Yeah.
And if none of them align with your current product, and you're making a decision, we're going to evolve in this certain way, are you looking for like the same feedback to come in from multiple sources? So you say, okay, then that gets a sticky note and put on our wall, and we'll keep that on the back burner and see if we want to pursue that route. Or how do you prevent from getting pulled in 50 different directions and then end up destroying your product?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's sort of two answers to that. So one, as a background, like I've always done B2B stuff, and so like my level of comfort with kind of like B2C, not knowing a business model as you're building something, psychologically I can't handle that. Like I can't handle not knowing where the money's going to come from. So the reason I say that is that the people that are saying to me, at least were saying to me, I would pay for this. That's the first sign, right? I don't really listen to anything unless someone says I would pay for this, or I could make money off of this. And the first person that did that was actually another customer I pitched this sort of click to buy video to. They're called Videofy Me, and they were essentially like, look, we've got this really big problem. People keep uploading not only like offensive content, which usually isn't that, I just thought that was funny, but it's usually like, it's usually not even really graphic anything. It's sort of just inappropriate violence, excessive drug use, whatever. They have that problem, and they were losing advertisers, right? So their advertisers were saying, I'm not going to run ads with you because you keep putting my videos in front of bong hits and stuff like that. And so they're just like, they don't want to do that. Two, they were having problems with people uploading copyright content, and that was a bigger problem because then their advertisers were even more upset because now they're basically paying somebody else for stealing content. And so they were like, look, we would pay you to get this data so that you can use it to moderate the videos. Just forget about the tagging of the objects. We just want to know if it's this or that. And we would pay for that. And that's what they told me, and I said, okay, well that I can wrap my mind around. And these other conversations I was having, it was sort of like, well, how much do we pay for it? Can you change the cursor? So it was really the ones that are voting with their wallet. And I didn't wait for multiple. As soon as he said that, I was like, okay, well that makes sense. And it takes a little bit of a gamble. I think I heard some other customers saying that as well. But when someone says they'd pay for something like that, and that it'd be critical for their business, and also that they would make money off of that. I mean, the idea that essentially they would be getting a return on their investment by paying us, I think that was probably the strongest sign. So.
If I understand correctly that you were first to market in this category? If you're the only ones doing this?
Not in actually the click to buy stuff, there were a few other people that were doing it. The difference for us is that we were doing the tagging in an automated fashion.
That's what I'm talking about. So you're the first to introduce that.
Automated tagging?
Yes.
It's hard to say exactly if we were first. I think there's another company called Set TV that is they're different because they have a similar technology that we have, but they buy and sell media, so they actually imagine that we do what we do, but instead of working with ad networks, we are an ad network, and we're basically buying up video inventory and running and selling ads against it.
Here's my real question.
Okay.
What I'm running against is I appear to be the first and the only in the whole DC metro region doing what I'm doing, and so I'm kind of hearing what you're doing. And I'm wondering what kind of resistance you got from people saying, because you always hear, well, don't ever tell people that you're the first to do it, because there's got to be someone else out there already doing it. So I'm having this interesting challenge, and I'm wondering if you experience this as well, where we'll invest in you, and we know that there are other competitors out there, which then validates that your business model has merit and is investable. I'm wondering if you. So
you're talking about investors, not customers, right?
Yes.
So it's definitely a different conversation. Because well, no, it's great. I'll answer the question. As customers, they don't really care if you're first to market. Like my customers don't care. They're just like, how much do you cost, and are you competing with me or not, right? And then how fast, how accurate. These are the questions they ask. First to market is less important with a customer, at least from my experience. But with investors, yeah, I mean it's hard to say. I mean, there also isn't any benefit for me locally saying I'm the first to market in DC, because there are almost no ad companies in DC. So it's not like, it's pretty easy to be first to market as a video ad company in DC in an ad tech space. But yeah, investors do look for that sometimes. I think there's always going to be, it's really hard to come up with a totally original idea. So I think, it's hard to.
Do you feel that
it's hard to validate that?
When you got your nearly $1 million of funding, was it based on because you were doing something so unique, so different, so special, you were solving a problem that no one else was, or was it that you just happened to be, or they saw a couple other people doing what you were doing across the country or whatever, but you just happened to be doing it better and more efficiently? You were a more mature, advanced version of the problem that was already been trying to attack and solve by others?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't number 2. I mean, it's still, this is an early market for us, and I mean, it's an early market for everyone. Like, generally, the information that advertisers have, when you press play in a video, right, and it goes off to an advertiser, an advertising network, they basically get a URL, right, and based on that URL, they have to deliver you an ad. And if you're watching a hockey game, they could give you, Stouffer's or Nike, and it's like there's no way for them to decision that. And so it's a pretty wide open space. I think the perception is probably amongst most investors that we're the first to market. I truthfully don't know when Set really got going with what they're doing. I know that we're probably the 2 first, at least that are mature enough to deliver something in large quantity. And I think that does appeal to investors. But I think you probably don't need to make the claim. I mean, I never make the claim to be first to market. I think my investors sort of do their own due diligence and then pick that up on their own. So I think maybe you could sort of lead the horse to water. Does that make sense? Instead of actually saying it.
Okay.
All right, thanks.